Today I'd like to introduce you to another life-changing idea from the other side of Jewish philosophical thought. Last week we spoke about the Alter of Slobodka, who was the epitome of the Lithuanian Musar school. Today we're going to be speaking about an answer from the Baal Shem Tov, the epitome of the non-Lithuanian Hasidic school. And we're going to talk about what Oneg Shabbos means to him. So I'd like to do something slightly different today, if it's okay with you. Yeah, no, I didn't actually bring food for you. I was actually thinking more like, instead of you just hearing me talk for an hour, I want to start off the class with a little bit of a Harusa session. So I'm going to give you guys the text of the Baal Shem Tov, and I'll ask you to pair off and just read through it, try to figure out what the Baal Shem Tov is trying to say, and maybe what some of your questions or thoughts are for further discussion after the Baal Shem Tov. So let's distribute it, and then we'll come back together in about 5-7 minutes, okay? So I'd like to hear all the thoughts and ideas that people have had when discussing this text. So this is the Baal Shem Tov. It's quoted in Yisro, in Parshas Yisro, although the Baal Shem Tov himself never wrote a sefer, and so everything we have from the Baal Shem Tov is based on writings of his students. In that respect, I guess he is quite similar to the Alter of Slobodka. So, the Baal Shem Tov starts with a pasuk. Yismechu v'malchus chashomrei Abbas shomei Shabbos. You kulam yisbeu v'yisangu mituvecha. Kulam yisbeu v'yisangu mituvecha. Okay, so we're clearly speaking about Shabbos, and there's something very intrinsic about this phrase when it has to do with Oneg Shabbos. So it's talking about the type of Oneg, or the way in which we experience Oneg and pleasure on Shabbos. So we have to figure out, what does that mean? So what is the problem that the Baal Shem Tov identifies in the pasuk? What's the issue? Yes, Chaya?
The issue he's saying is the order, that it says, pasuk says be satiated and then find pleasure, but he's saying it should be the opposite.
Good.
Once you're satiated, you're no longer searching.
Amazing. So in virtually all areas of our lives, whenever we are enjoying something, it's because we're not full. And as soon as we're full, we no longer enjoy it. You would say it scientifically or mathematically that there's an inverse relationship between pleasure and satiation. The more pleasure there is, the less satiated you are. You're still very hungry, you're still not satisfied. The more satiated you are, the more full you are, the less the pleasure is. So your first bite of steak tastes amazing because you're starving and you've been waiting for that flaming side of T-bone for a long time, and you stick it in your mouth and it's absolutely incredible. By the 27th bite of steak, these classes start to blend into each other, whoever is here last class. By the 27th bite of steak, you are fed up with meat. You'll never eat meat again until 2 days later, when you're hungry again for meat. And so it's a catch-22. We like being done. Nobody likes being hungry, but as soon as we're done and we're full, the steak no longer tastes good. So there's a problem, is that you can never find satiation and pleasure in the same place at the same time in this world. And that's what bothers the Baal Shem Tov, is that he says, hold on, this pasuk is describing Oneg, but this pasuk says, Yisba'u, they'll be full. Seviyah means satiation, satisfaction. V'yisangu, and then they'll get pleasure from your good. How could we even imagine such a thing? How could we even imagine such a thing? Now he gives two examples of how you can find satiation without pleasure and pleasure without satiation. What are the examples he gives? Ariella? Before we go into the further thought, the further elaboration. I just want to make sure that we get it clear, because to understand the solution, we really need to be familiar with the problem. So what's one of the examples where we get one without the other? Money. The pursuit of money gives you lots of pleasure, but no satiation. You'll never be finished. Ohev kesef lo yisba kesef, actually the pasuk says. One who loves money will never be satisfied with money. Right? So if, I tell this to students a lot who are in university, and I say, what is your goal? What are you trying to get out of your job, out of your career, your life? And they say, I want to make a lot of money. And I say to them, that's a terrible strategy. Because I want to make a lot of money actually has no limit. There's no goal in mind. And as soon as you get whatever you think right now is a lot of money, I guarantee you, once you achieve that, you won't think that it's enough. So it's a self-defeating strategy simply to say, I want to pursue money. Could be, I want what money can give me. I want to be able to at least, have enough money that if, God forbid, I need to take somebody to the hospital, I can afford to. I want to have enough money that I can put food on my plate. I want to have enough money that I can have guests for Shabbos. I want to have enough money so that I can actually donate my money to some sort of charity. I want to have enough money so that I can have the resources to help other people, to have a satisfying life. Well, then all of a sudden you've given yourself a very tangible goal, and then you say, great, I need the resources to get to that goal. Now you can start to pursue money that way. But just the pursuit of money will give you lots of pleasure but no satisfaction. And on the other side, what gives you satiation but no pleasure? Food. Eventually the pleasure runs out. The pleasure is very, very limited. And once you're full, there's no longer any pleasure. Now, I didn't translate the rest of the Baal Shem Tov, and I was meaning to, so I apologize about that. But the Baal Shem Tov then goes on to describe how it is actually possible to have your cake and eat it too, literally. To have the satiation as well as the pleasure in the same place at the same time. How do you become full with something, and then once you're full, you still enjoy it? Can anybody give me an example of some sort of activity or area of your life where even when you're satiated, it's still pleasurable? Did you have an answer to that, Ariella, or you had another question? Okay, let's hear your question before we move on.
Okay, so basically it says that they will be satiated in pleasure. So, like, the Baal Shem Tov, right?
That's who he is.
Yeah, he has the answer that, like, this. But that doesn't really answer the actual question, because...
I have not put the answer to the question on this sheet. No. He does answer the question, but I didn't translate it. So he's just giving examples of the problem. He's telling you what the problem is. In this world, we don't see an example. How can you tell me that on Shabbos, right, B'korei oneg, we're supposed to get this thing called oneg on Shabbos, and then you tell me what the qualities of this oneg are going to be? It's going to be yisba'u v'yis'angu mituvecha. They'll be satiated and they'll have pleasure from your good. Well, excuse me, Hashem, but I don't see a situation where that will ever be possible to arise, because where one is, the other is not. You can't be satiated and then have pleasure. The two cannot exist simultaneously. So how is that possible? That's the problem that the Baal Shem Tov is illustrating.
But clearly you can.
Oh yeah, well we're about to get there. But you seem to have had a question before we get to the answer.
Can.
Yeah.
And so my problem is why once you can't, like, would you be able to do pleasure and then satiation in the world outside of Shabbos?
Yeah, sure. If you could do pleasure before satiation, that's food, right? Food is first pleasure and then satiation. But there's no situation where you'd have satiation and then pleasure. So he's saying, first of all, he's saying that the order is incorrect, right? You can't be full and then have more pleasure. You can start with pleasure and then get towards fullness, but by the time you get to full, there's no longer pleasure. but at least you can have the right order. You can have yis angu and then yisbu'u, but you can't have yisbu'u yis angu. That's his problem. All right. So, are there areas of our lives where we could possibly imagine that it's possible, once you're full, to be fully satiated and to continue experience pleasure? Yes, Abigail Khan.
I think in terms of Torah learning, it's something that you might experience that, where you can have that, you can learn something that like strikes you, and it's so incredible, and you feel like you just experience like a whole world of knowledge, and you feel full in that moment. But instead of it being like, oh, it's not enough, it's more like, I want more, not from the not being satiated element, but it's like it's inspiring to you. So it's like you want to seek more of that, but not because what you have is not enough. Does that make sense?
Yes, in fact, that's the answer of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says the greatest example of this, where it's entirely possible, once you're full, to continue experiencing oneg, is the process of learning Torah. He says, you can get to a point of learning Torah where the more you've seen, the more enjoyable it is. The more you know, the more the next page of Gemara or the next pasuk you look up in Chumash is going to make even more sense to you now that you've seen it already, now that you've seen so much already. You can get to a point where the process and the destination are both enjoyable. You are satiated with the result, you're excited by the process, and the whole thing starts all over again. He actually says for a beginner, when you start learning a very difficult piece, it's painful and it's unpleasant, and you're in the dark and you're like, why does this make sense? And why do I have to spend my time doing this? And then all of a sudden you get to a point where you have this aha moment and you're like, oh, wow. That was so worth it, and I see how everything fits together, and I see how all my questions were answered. And now the next time you go around asking another hard question, you thoroughly enjoy the process of that hard question. And so now you can have yisba'u, the fullness and the satisfaction of having arrived at a deep, wonderful conclusion, followed by v'yis angu. Now every step of the way is enjoyable, because I love the process, I love the difficulty, and I enjoy the question. So that's one of the very obvious examples that we can have where you can have what is effectively a never-ending joy, a never-ending amount of pleasure. We are often stymied in our desire, like I wish, this is what they say, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, about the Romans, where they'd eat so much and then they'd go to the vomitorium, the room where you had to throw up, where you'd go throw up so that you could keep eating. Because why should I stop now? There's still so much food. Never heard this? It's unclear whether they actually did that or whether the word vomitorium meant something else. People sometimes now say, but there was...
Like athletic bodies, I don't think they were eating and eating and eating and eating.
Oh, no. They were eating and eating and eating and eating. They were trust me, my friend, every decadent society where there was wealth and had people who were eating to excess.
Eating so much they had to throw up.
They ate so much that they didn't want to stop eating, so they went and threw up and kept eating even more. So there is this frustration with the physical world that it's like, oh man, all the things I enjoy eventually get boring to me, or I'm no longer interested in it. It's like, how many times can you go on the same roller coaster? How many times can you drive the same car before it's just no longer interesting anymore, and now I need to find something else? So
I feel like that's could also be true in other things. Like, this is a little bit of a less, I don't know.
this is true with the physical world.
But I'm saying, like, for example, some people are like super picky eaters and they only have 2 foods that they eat and they'll never get sick of them.
Yes, but eventually they have to stop eating that meal, right?
No,
You're right.
I eat in the same meal.
No. I mean, within that meal. Meaning, you're right. You could have somebody who eats peanut butter and jelly every single day of their lives for lunch, but that lunchtime, they can't eat 18 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
I really hate to be this person, but I do know someone who has a condition where they never feel full.
But that's an illness, right? That's an illness. So we're talking about healthy people who, once they've eaten enough, their body says, you've eaten enough, and now I'm no longer interested in eating anymore. All right. However, it is possible to find areas where you can feel very full and still keep going. And one of those areas is wisdom. The pursuit of wisdom, and particularly Torah, which is never-ending wisdom, is you can always find something deeper. You can always find something more beautiful. You can always, you can always read a pasuk again. The same parsha that you read last year and the year before and the year before can take on new depths of meaning and understanding the more you learn it. And so your enjoyment only grows even as you're more and more satisfied and satiated. Okay, what else? What other areas of your life could you find this in? Yes.
Two things.
Yeah.
Answering that question and have an issue with the thing.
Okay, so let's start with the thing before. You have an issue with the thing before.
Well, I have an issue with that because if you're still searching and you're still like, you know, as Abigail kind of said, inspiring to learn more, then is that really satisfaction? Is that really satiation? Because you're learning and like.
Please,
now
guys, I'm having
enjoying
trouble
what you're
concentrating. Please. Yes.
You're enjoying what you're learning and you're like, wow, I just learned this great piece of Torah, but then like, if you're still like, oh wow, I want to delve deeper, I want to learn more, then is that really satiation?
So I think that's what Abigail Chana was trying to express here, which is that there's something unique about wisdom where you do feel deeply satisfied by one level that you've learned, and yet you can still go deeper. In other words, we know what it feels like in when we're talking about physical lack. Physical lack, you feel empty. You feel like I need something to complete me. I feel incomplete. But learning Torah at a certain level, you can get to a point where you feel deeply completed by what you've just done, and yet you know that there's more to do. You know that there's more you could go with into that area, or even another area of Torah. Does that make sense? You feel it qualitatively differently.
It's not that pleasure means like you're still enjoying it, it means that you're still like working for it, it means you're still...
Yes, that's right. And this is why, by the way, this is the answer that Rabbi Dessler gives to how is it possible to be sameach bechelko. How can you be happy with what you have? Because haven't you lacked, now where's your ambition? What does it mean? You're done? You never want anything more? That's not a life. So he says the greatest area that you can be sameach bechelko is in ruchnius, is in spirituality, because there you can be totally satisfied, like you feel deeply, deeply satiated by what you've done, and yet you still want more. And the two can be both true at the same time. Yeah, Ruti.
Kind of a little side point to like what you were just previously saying. Have you watched or read The Hunger Games?
No.
That's what I was saying.
No.
It kind of talks a lot about like
the Hunger Games. Okay.
Yeah.
So everyone's hungry and there's a lack there.
No.
Do you know what the Hunger Games is?
I have a basic idea of what the Hunger Games is about, but I've never
But it's like a lot about like
read
society and like whatever's higher stuff.
Okay.
But in the third, I don't remember if they do it in the movie or not, but it was in the book. They have like this huge piece, and there's the capital, which is kind of like the people who are like
In control.
or rich, control, whatever.
Yeah.
And they have like crazy amounts of food there, and it's all the rich people. And they have like these drinks where they go to the bathroom and throw up so that they can go eat more.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So that's based on a Roman practice.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think in terms of something else that you can be satiated in and then still want more like...
Wait, you gave the first answer. I want to give space to see if anybody else has a... Does anyone else have another suggestion? Are there other areas of life where we can see this true, that this plays out as well? Yes, Katie.
I feel like working out, like the more you do it, the more you enjoy it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Okay, so let's take exercise, right? Now, exercise on the one
At a certain
hand...
point, you're going to hit your limit. You can't exercise for...
Right, so
7
on the
hours.
one hand, exercise is an interesting thing.
An hour.
Exercise is an interesting thing. There's an element of exercise which you have to stop at a certain point, right? Where you can no longer do anymore. And yet, I think that you're touching on something where there are certain activities which the more you do them, the more you enjoy going further. And I think it would not just be limited to exercise, but what other things where it's like the more you do it, the more fun it is.
Human connection.
What?
Human
Wait. That's going to be a third answer.
Yeah, that's what I was
But let's dwell on this. What about like practicing an instrument?
Oh yeah.
Right? That's similar to exercise, right? It's practice. So there's another element which is self-development, right? Personal development also has this area where if you do something for a little bit, it's okay, but you see that you're making progress and you feel fulfilled by that. And the more you feel fulfilled by that, the more you're motivated and the more exciting and fun it is for sure playing an instrument, right? When you first start out playing an instrument, you hate it. But once you get to a certain level of competence, then even practicing is more fun. So you can have levels of satiation and enjoyment at the same time, right?
That's like
So-
challenge.
What?
Like any time you're dealt with like learning a new skill.
That's right.
challenge.
Learning a new skill. So this would all fall under the realm of personal growth. To see yourself being able to develop and being able to get better at something, be able to master something, that's an area where you're going to see yisba'u v'yis angu, right? And by the way, Torah learning is part of that as well. That you see yourself getting better at, I see the more knowledge I have, the more skills that I have and my ability to learn, the more enjoyable it is. Absolutely. Okay. The second area, I would group that, I'm going to group all of that under personal growth, right? Self-development, self-mastery, as well as the acquisition of wisdom and knowledge. The second area, as Chaya said, is human relationships. I'm sure everybody here has got like a best friend where it's like, we could just keep talking all night, Eventually you're going to pass out and fall asleep. But the more you invest in somebody and the more you develop the relationship, the more enjoyable the relationship becomes, which is really quite amazing. And so that's, by the way, a very key, very important way of keeping any relationship fresh is that you have to look at that other as that person as somebody where it's how can you and I work towards a level of completion, a level of understanding, and of where we really complement each other, and then continue to enjoy each other's company by working harder on something else and continuing to grow in our relationship. A human being is never a finished product, and there's always something more that you can learn about them and always something more that you can appreciate about them, and you can grow more together. Yeah.
Maybe this falls under the category of human connection, but I was thinking like chesed. Like I know that there's some people it's not like
100%.
whatever, but I know some people
Chesed.
quite literally, like we were talking about, like there's this family in Yerushalayim, like the Machlis family.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think people like that could function without constantly doing chesed. Like
Yes.
they need to.
Chesed is an acquired taste for some people in the sense that you feel at the beginning like, oh, why do I have to give up my time and have to give up the things that I want to do? And then all of a sudden you start doing it and you realize, I could do this all day. This gives me more than I give them. I'm getting out more than I'm giving to them because
I don't think they'll ever feel satiated.
Right. But there again, remember, in matters of spirituality, you can have a feeling of deep satisfaction. Meaning, you don't come away from doing chesed feeling like you're empty. You feel full. You feel very full, and yet you feel like you want to keep going.
But then, what about someone who, let's say, for example, doesn't connect to sitting and learning Torah?
So I would say like this. Okay, so you're asking a good question. What about the people who don't connect to? Yeah, no, I understand.
They don't like to sit and learn Torah. All day.
I'm gonna. So okay, first of all, not every Jew is obligated to sit and learn Torah all day. Let's just put that out there. I don't think that needs mentioning, but we have every Jew is a mitzvah to learn Torah on their own level in the area that they should be able to find something in Torah that excites them and motivates and gives them energy and gives them inspiration. Okay? If there are people out there who don't enjoy learning Torah, I would say that's probably a fault of the education system and not a fault in them. Although sometimes, people aren't looking hard enough. But
I don't think that's fair because
I think it is fair. I think that not everybody is meant to sit and learn in kollel or be a teacher or be a rabbi or be a Talmud Chacham or whatever. Everyone has a mitzvah to learn Torah, and there's got to be something in Torah that excites you. It could be some people love, we just had guests from my wife's seminary over Shabbos. This girl sat there, MMY, sat there the whole Shabbos just learning halacha. She's like, I love halacha. I only learn about halacha. I want to learn halacha. The more halacha I learn, the happier I am. And I was like, that's fantastic for you. I don't necessarily resonate with that, but amazing. Kol hakavod. And there's a couple girls in this seminary who's told that to me, that they love halacha and they can't get enough of it. And there are other people who love deep, spiritual, Kabbalistic, mystical ideas, Hebrew letters. I erased the board. Right? Patterns, beauty, right? All of that stuff. And then there's some people who love personal growth, musar. I want to see how I can improve myself as a human being. I want to see how I can be a better giver and what it means to work on myself. And then I love learning the stories of Tanakh, and I love seeing the amazing humanity of all of the Avos Imaos and how they dealt with challenges and situations. I guarantee you there are so many pathways of Torah that are very different from each other and excite different types of people. There has got to be something that everybody can find that excites them in Torah.
But I'm saying they would still.
But okay, so hold on a second. Now you're going to ask me, well, okay, you want to get oneg on Shabbos. So how do I find my yisbu v'yis angu? Well, it could be that I'm going to sit there and learn the Parsha for 7 hours, and each Orach Chaim and Kli Yakar and Sfarno that I see makes me higher and brings me higher and brings me higher. Or you're going to say, you know what I really, really love? I really love sitting down with my closest friends and family and engaging in a wonderful, heartfelt conversation about, talking about each other's lives, thinking about our hopes for the future. And that's where I derive so much of my joy on Shabbos, is by spending time in human relationships. Amazing. Guess what? Shabbos is built for that. Built for human relationships, much more than the other days of the week. What else? What other areas of our lives can we find that the more you do it, the more satisfied you feel, and yet you still experience joy as you do it more? Sleeping. I would say sleeping, probably not so. Like the first, 10 hours of sleep feel great. Maybe even 11 or 12 if you're a seminary student. But after that, you start actually feeling groggy. You actually feel less good the more you sleep. Okay, Abigail Khan, I'm going to give it to you because no one else is raising their hands. Anyone? Last chance? Is there anyone else for whom they can find a yisba'u and then a yisangu? You feel deep satiation. You feel full and complete and whole, and you're still enjoying it.
Shabbos.
Yeah, but what about Shabbos? Which parts of Shabbos? So far we've spoken about Torah. We've spoken about human relationships, developing those relationships. Torah and self-development, right? What else? Yeah.
This isn't universal, but reading?
Yeah, reading, right. So we said the acquisition of knowledge, skill, right?
Well, even if it's fiction.
Even fiction. Okay, so stories are interesting. Stories do fit under the category, and maybe we can try to figure out why that is. Something about a story, and it's actually maybe something about play, right? Because stories are a type of a game, in a certain sense. Right? It's inhabiting a pretend world that we like to throw ourselves into, but that is very interesting. What were you going to say?
I guess it's kind of a question, but it could be an answer as well. You could say that anything that's an expression of connection to God is what leads you to feeling that way. All of these things are just like micro, like categories of
You
that.
got it.
So
In the areas of Ruchnius,
right.
which is connection to God. Take care. So the final realm or domain where you can find this deep satisfaction is literally connecting to God. Tefillah, meditation, people who do this correctly know what I'm talking about when they say they could stay in that state for a very, very, very long time. And the more they do it, the better it feels. And this is something which, for those of you who have taken more than one of my classes, you know that this is one of my deep, deep passion projects about the Jewish people, about the frum world today, is that we just don't have enough experience in the tradition of Jewish meditation. We don't know how to daven properly. We don't know how to sit and connect to the divine. We don't know how to have those altered states of consciousness, the legal ones, I mean. We just don't know how to get there so easily. But if anybody who's ever experienced that, it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing how enjoyable it continues to remain after you've done it for a very long time. So this is the third area, which is like these things just they don't run out. They don't run out. And the reason why is exactly as you said. Human relationships, you're connecting with something divine in that other person. The development of the self, the acquisition of wisdom, all of these are things which are touching on something holy, something divine, something godly. And then speaking to God, connecting with the divine in a very direct sense. All of these things are things that don't run out. The areas where we struggle, the areas where we struggle with this inverse relationship between satiation and pleasure are all the areas of physicality. Because physicality is by definition finite. It will run out. It will stop feeling good. But ruchnius is exactly the opposite. And so somebody who wants to live the most hedonistic lifestyle, I highly recommend you invest in learning to appreciate ruchni activities. That will guarantee you the maximum amount of pleasure that you can feel in your life. In ruchnius, spiritual pursuits. They're far more pleasurable and last much longer and usually way cheaper than physical pleasures. So let's take a look at the structure of Shabbos, because I would suggest to you that all of these things are built into the way Shabbos is experienced by almost all of us, right? Shabbos is a lot of praying. It's a lot of spending time with other people if you're doing it right. And it's a lot of personal growth through Torah, through learning, and through other types of self-mastery, if you will. Although the best thing to do on Shabbos would be learning Torah, because it's the most direct. More so than practicing an instrument, right? That's what Shabbos is. Those are the main activities of Shabbos. Now, we can include one more thing, which is eating, right? Because we do eat a lot on Shabbos. Where would that fall? So we have a problem, because we just said that eating is one of those activities where the more you do it, the less pleasurable you feel. So it's something that is in the physical world and is bound by that problem with physicality. And yet, if we add what we saw from last week of the altar of Shabbat, we would know how to use physicality in the right way. That yes, the taste of the food will diminish. But if I'm using that food as a method of tshuva, as a method of oneg, as a method of recognizing the spirituality inside of that food, then that lingers around a lot longer. And so even though I can't fully get there in the same way that I could with learning a good Devar Torah, I can still get close enough. I can still even bring the things that are bound by physicality, and I can elevate them to a level where they are close to resembling spiritual pleasure. So on Shabbos, I'm taking all of these realms, all of these domains, all of these areas, which feel great and hypothetically never run out. Now, why do I say hypothetically? Because eventually you get tired, you get hungry, you're distracted. We only all have so much of an attention span and an ability to focus and concentrate. And eventually your best friend may start to get on your nerves. So all of these things, because we live as physical beings in physical bodies, eventually even the most spiritual pursuits will start to give way. There will be a diminishing marginal return, if there's any economic dorks in here. Diminishing marginal returns means essentially what we're saying, which is that the more you have of one thing, the less benefit you get from it with each successive bite or successive amount that you get. But nonetheless, our entire Shabbos is structured towards reaching for these types of pleasures. That the real oneg of Shabbos is the one where it's true that you can have Yisba'u v'Yis'angu mituvecha. Yisba'u v'Yis'angu mituvecha. This is the slogan. This is the mission statement of how we want to spend our Shabbases. Spend it doing the activities that give you this. Are there any questions, comments so far before I move on? Cool. Good. This, by the way, I hope you by now realize that the way that I like to learn and the way that I like to teach is everything is a tool. Everything has a use. Everything here is so that you can go home or go spend Shabbos and implement this and be like, wow, this will in some way tangibly enhance my Shabbos experience. I now know what I'm looking for in a Shabbos. I now know which activities I should be spending my time on because this is the greatest use of my desire for pleasure, my search for oneg. Yeah.
I know you made a joke about non-legal ways of elevating yourself, but there definitely are some there's some notable rabbis who use psychedelics to bring yourself to that. Do you think that that's a negative expression of connection to God?
Yeah, well, we touched on it briefly when we were speaking about Kiddush, because I did say that the Torah is pro-drugs, right? And
it's a wonderful sentence.
The Torah is pro-drugs.
Well, from the fact that we see that we are commanded to use a drug called alcohol to be able to enhance our holidays. So we see
that we use it to enhance our experience.
Absolutely. What do you think they were doing?
I thought it was just holy.
It just happened to be that alcohol, changes your perception and alters your state of being. It's just a happy coincidence? No, that's exactly what alcohol is for.
I thought it was just because it's like kadosh.
Why is it kadosh? Why is it kadosh? We spoke about it in the Kiddush class. You'll have to go find a recording or something. See it on YouTube when I post it in a few weeks. The idea of using substances, if it's used and channeled in the right way, is from what I have seen and studied is a positive thing. And I've spoken to a lot of people about it, and there is an understanding that everything that exists in the world has a function. And if it exists in the world, then it probably has a useful function. Now, it's possible with these types of things, as with many shortcuts, to be abused, because there is the natural way of building ourselves to a point where we can experience something that's spiritual. And if you do that, then it's much more likely to last and to have a tangible effect on your life. Whereas a person who can simply take a substance and it shoots them up there, they may have a really nice time. They may even have some insights about themselves, but it's not integrated. It's not part of them. So there's a time and place for these things. We speak about on Pesach, that Pesach, which means to skip over, literally means in a spiritual dimension that you can skip over many levels of where you are spiritually and reach a very high level in one night. The problem is the next day it all falls down. And then you have to spend the next 49 days incrementally building up naturally to get to Shavuos. The point, though, the benefit of shooting up all the way to the top is that you see where you're headed.
Right.
You know what's possible. It's like beginner's luck, right? There's something that's very exciting, or it's like romance, right? Anything that you begin, there's a period of excitement, joy, you're lovesick, you feel so inspired. You start a new job and you're like, wow, this is incredible. And then it sinks in after a few months and you're like, okay, I'm actually doing the same thing every single day. And that's the point where you have to say, okay, I felt what it was like to enjoy it. Now I have to build myself back up there naturally. I have to earn it. So I have suggested to people, and I tell them very, very clearly that certain things that are illegal and that have to be abided by law, and you have to take that very much into consideration. But if you are in capable hands and you have people who are really good at this, and in the United States, there's actually now a lot of frum psychology organizations that are becoming clinically licensed to deal with psychedelics in a clinical setting.
Right.
That it now is becoming more and more popular in the United States and Israel. So if you're in competent hands, then the use for it is that you can have a certain sense of clarity and see where you need to go, so that when you come back down, you know how to get back there.
Right.
That's what it could be for. But I would say that there used to be traditions for many, many, many different paths of achieving very similar, if not the same, states of consciousness through breath work, through dancing, through chanting and singing, through meditation, through fasting. There's a whole lot of different ways of reaching a similar level of spiritual consciousness. Okay? Okay, so now I want to just share with you, how much time do we have?
I think class is over in like
1 minute.
12:10.
Okay,
12:09. It's
give me
12:09.
1 minute, all right? Give me 3 minutes. Come on, this is good stuff, all right? There's a saying in the Gemara that a lot of things are 1/60th of something else. So sleep is 1/60th of death. A dream is 1/60th of prophecy.
A drop of milkshakes into a flake.
Well, that's exactly what 1/60th is, right? It's just enough not to be buttal. It's just, right? That's why it's buttal b'shishim, because anything less than a 60th, it's like it doesn't exist. Anything more than a 60th, it's the thing itself. 1/60th is on the cusp of almost kind of like what it could be. Yes? So a dream, almost kind of a drop of nevuah. Shabbos, they say, is 1/60th of the world to come. That's right. Which means that every time we experience Shabbos, we're experiencing the closest thing that we can get to in the world to come. Now, how do we want to develop ourselves into the types of people that can appreciate what that world will feel like? The answer is anything that you do on Shabbos, which gets you to a state where you could keep doing it and feel like you enjoy it. That's preparing you for a world of Olam Haba. What is Olam Haba all about? Olam Haba is eternal. Can you imagine doing anything that you would love to do forever? Now, before you answer, forever is a much longer time than you think it is. So anybody whose entire life is dedicated to buying new cars, well, how many cars can you buy before you get tired of driving a car? How many thousands or millions of years will it take before you're like, I never want to look at a car again? Somebody whose whole life is all about physical pleasure. Well, that's going to run out very quickly, my friend. The reason why this is the type of oneg, and this is the thing that we spend Shabbos doing, is because this is the type of pleasure that you could potentially do forever. So if you ever want to build yourselves into the type of person who could appreciate Olam Haba, like what does it mean to be a Ben Bas Olam Haba? Somebody who's preparing yourself for that next world? The practice is on Shabbos. The practice is on Shabbos. Because the more you enjoy the things that you could do forever, the more you'll get to a place where it is forever, and you'll be like, great, I feel right at home. I know exactly how I should be spending my time. Relationships, self-development, Torah, and connecting with the divine. So we look at Shabbos not just as a place to have a really, really good time, but as a place to be able to develop ourselves into the people who can appreciate what eternity will feel like.